What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Al. Thanks for joining us today. Concern over Taiwan's energy supply is growing amid predictions that the country's main power company could be hiking up prices. We're joined now by our reporter Joyce Zeng here in Taipei. Joyce, what are we hearing?
Speculation has come out that Taiwan's main power company, that's the state-owned Taipower, may be hiking up electricity prices by as much as a whopping 25%. Now, Taipower has been bleeding money, keeping prices low for decades. Over the past 2 years, the company has lost $14 billion but only gotten just over $1 billion in government subsidies. Now, earlier, I spoke to a Taipower representative who denied any pending plans to raise prices. But the economics minister, who also heads Taipower, has said that the goal this year is to not make losses and that subsidies will be prioritized as the way out. But doing the math, $14 billion in losses and just over $1 billion in subsidies, that seems like an ambitious goal.
Now, if prices do go up, it's likely going to hit big companies first. How would an electricity hike affect Taiwan's high-tech sector, especially its chipmakers?
Well, if a price hike were to happen, it would likely affect heavy users first, like chip makers. They're notorious as being power intensive. And the bigger concern, though, would be that the price hikes would be passed on to consumers, not just in Taiwan, but around the world. Taiwan makes the majority of the world's chips, which power essentially everything with an on switch. So the knock-on effects here are considerable for Taiwan's economy, but also the global one.
Thank you, Joyce. That's Joyce Dunn reporting live from here in Taipei. The U.S. is Taiwan's largest provider of weapons and military training. And China's increased threats around Taiwan are prompting Washington to offer some of its most advanced systems and tactics. Jaime Ocon explains.
Taiwan is on track to have one of the largest fleets of U.S.-made F-16 fighter jets in the world, with more than 200 of the aircraft to be delivered by 2026. Part of this buildup is because of the increase in Chinese warplanes and ships operating around the country on almost a daily basis. On Tuesday, Taiwan's defense ministry reported 25 Chinese military aircraft flying near its borders. 13 of those planes breached the country's ADIZ, a defensive buffer zone that is not sovereign airspace. To equip the F-16s, the country is investing in new weapons, such as this one, the AGM-154. AGM stands for Air-to-Ground Missile. It uses built-in wings to glide and can hit targets on the ground or at sea. U.S. defense contractors are now producing 50 of these missiles for Taiwan, which could help prevent a blockade if China tries to take over the country.
Now, in a blockade situation, that actually air-to-ground missiles become a little more interesting because, okay, let's say you have a bunch of ships. Well, now if they're sea capable, they can actually target ships and take out blockades. The problem is, though, that once you do that, you're into a shooting war.
While these missiles are some of the most advanced in the world, the sale is more about demonstrating the U.S.'s commitment to helping Taiwan defend itself.
台湾获得这个 AGM-154之后呢，其实让空军的 F16机队呢，它有能力去打击福建的第一线的机场港口。这些飞弹其实并不足额但是它有一个象征意义说美国军方呢总算首肯把这个算是攻击性的飞弹给了台湾了。
Aside from the new hardware, Taiwan also relies heavily on the U.S. for military training. U.S. Special Forces instructors are reportedly also in Taiwan, helping train troops in the country's outlying islands. The soldiers receiving this training would be among the first lines of defense in any invasion.
绿扁帽就是防守型的这种特种部队它是用来反制敌人渗透。那特别是跟我国的这两栖侦察营结合。
New aircraft, missiles, and enhanced training are all part of Taiwan's effort to prevent China from invading the country. And Taiwan is betting that its largest provider of weapons and military assistance will continue providing its assistance. Dolphin Chen and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Guatemala's foreign minister says his country is considering strengthening trade ties with China. But Guatemala also hopes to maintain its formal relations with Taiwan. The Central American country is one of Taiwan's 12 remaining diplomatic allies. Guatemala recently inaugurated a new president who has said that he wants deeper relations with China. Part of Guatemala's approach would be a trade office that could help find a Chinese market for Guatemalan products.
Vamos a seguir trabajando con Taiwán en los niveles en los que ya lo veníamos haciendo, que no podemos ignorar el peso y la potencia que representa China en muchos campos. Y en base a eso es que tendríamos el interés, por supuesto, de acercarnos a ellos y de tratar de desarrollar algún vínculo alrededor del tema comercio de manera institucional.
The new legislative session will start on February 20th. The newly elected legislative speaker, Hengjun, presided over his first party consultation on Monday. That was the first day at work for Taiwan's newly installed lawmakers. Han is from the Kuomintang, which has been the main opposition party for the past 8 years. They have the most seats in the new legislature, but not a majority. Han chose the 20th as a compromise between dates suggested by the three main parties. He said it would also give legislators time to rest after the upcoming Lunar New Year holiday. Activists are calling for the government to do more to protect pedestrians on Taiwan's streets. They're demanding that all roads have sidewalks. Figures show that more than 2,700 people died in traffic accidents across the country last year. That number was not significantly lower than previous years, despite a crackdown on traffic violations. The activists say standardizing road regulations will make it safer for both pedestrians and drivers. Meanwhile, Taiwan's railway company is short on safety inspectors ahead of the biggest travel season of the year. And after 2 fatal crashes, victims' relatives say it's time for the company to get serious about safety. John Van Trieste takes a look.
Hengjun is a 7-year veteran of Taiwan's railway system. She's a safety inspector and maintenance worker who trains new recruits. She's proud to be the first woman from the Greater Taipei area to do this job.
只是说你对这个东西有兴趣，那下足够的功夫，其实担任检察员对于女生来讲，并不是一件太难的事情。
But inspectors like Chen are becoming harder to find. On January 1st, Taiwan's rail company officially changed from an arm of the government to a state-owned corporation, a movement to improve safety after fatal crashes in 2018 and 2021. But a growing number of safety inspectors are choosing this transition point as their chance to retire, joining over 1,000 staff taking a voluntary retirement package. The remaining 800 inspectors are left stretched with a heavier workload, and it will be some time before fresh recruits arrive to help them.
整体进来可能要到下半年，那我们就觉得应该就是这段时间台铁应该还是要用一些额外的，不管是约聘的还是对方式来去先填补人力啦。
The government and the railway's new management have promised a revamped safety system and more oversight. But many are not convinced this is happening fast enough. An association of families of people killed in the 2021 crash are among those unhappy with the pace of change. 49 died and around 200 were injured in this collision between a train and a construction truck that had slid onto the tracks. It was Taiwan's deadliest train accident since the 1940s. Victims' families say the company hasn't made any progress or plans for reform. The new company says it needs a little more time, and outside experts are coming to help.
董事会的一个顾问单位哈，对，他会成立2月份的第2次董事会呢，会有一些由董事会来处理。
Still, Taiwan is just days away from the Lunar New Year holiday, the busiest travel season of the year. Ready or not, the first big test for the newly formed company is just down the tracks. Klein Wang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
As housing prices in Taiwan skyrocket, young people are increasingly relying on inheritance to become a homeowner, while those looking to buy are left in the lurch. Tiffany Wang reports.
Buying a house in Taiwan. This dream is rapidly becoming a fantasy for many young people as housing becomes more expensive and harder to find.
房价涨得太快了，台北买不下去就会去往新北啊、桃园啊，这个是没有争议的，就大部分人都是这样子。
头期款的部分对年轻人的压力还蛮大的。
Taiwan's housing price-to-income ratio reached a record high in the third quarter of 2023, according to the latest government figures. That means that salaries are failing to match the rising cost of housing. Of all the properties that got new owners last year, the number of those that were transferred through inheritance reached an all-time high.
长辈呢，普遍都倾向于留房养老，而不是养儿防老。 那房子呢，都非得等到过世之后才会给下一代的继承人给继承。
As people are increasingly holding onto their homes to pass down to their children in the longer term, those hoping to buy into Taiwan's housing market are finding both their options and their wallets squeezed. Patrick Chen and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Britain's King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer. The 75-year-old monarch has already started receiving treatment in London. The cancer was spotted during a recent procedure for an enlarged prostate. The type of tumor has not been revealed, but a royal source says it is not prostate cancer. The king will postpone public duties, but will continue his weekly meetings with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Buckingham Palace says Charles remains positive about his treatment. Australian father, academic and writer Yang Hengjun has been given a suspended death sentence in China over espionage charges. As Rosie Greninger reports, the Australian government is appalled by the decision.
Australian citizen and pro-democracy advocate Yang Hengjun handed the most severe of sentences by a Chinese court.
依法对澳大利亚籍被告人杨军间谍案一审公开宣判，认定杨军犯间谍罪，判处死刑，缓期2年执行。
The suspended sentence means Yang will most likely face life in jail and only be executed if he's found guilty of more crimes within 2 years. Before moving to Australia in 1999, where he became an academic, Yang was a diplomat in Beijing's foreign ministry. He only returned to China in 2019 to visit his ailing father. A frequent blogger of Chinese political dealings, Yang was arrested for spying as soon as he landed back in his country of birth. He has spent more than 4 years in a Beijing prison. Yang has always denied these accusations, and the Australian government say they are baseless.
The Australian government is appalled at this outcome. We will be communicating our response in the strongest terms.
It's shattering news for his family, who shared a statement saying this result comes at the extreme end of worst expectations. After China released Australian journalist Cheng Lei last year, the Yang family wrote to Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, hoping for a similar outcome, sharing Dr. Yang's own words. "I haven't enjoyed any direct sunlight for over 4 years. Don't worry about me. The Australian government are paying attention to my case. I just hope I'll be able to get out alive." The Australian government has vowed to make efforts for his release, already summoning and reprimanding the country's Chinese ambassador.
We have conveyed, firstly, to China our dismay, our despair, our frustration, but to put it really simply, our outrage at this verdict. This is a very harsh sentence on Dr. Yung, who is a man who's not in good health, and we will continue to make the strongest representations.
Human rights experts say the sentencing is unjust after a closed trial and countless delays.
Yang himself has alleged torture, forced confessions, particularly in the earlier period of interrogations. He had delayed access to legal representation, limited access to a lawyer. Australian diplomats were also prevented from entering the courtroom. So we actually have very little information about what it is that Yang is alleged to have done.
This outcome will again test the relationship between Australia and China, only just recovering from years of tension. Despite ties stabilising under the Albanese government in recent years, it hasn't seemed to grant them enough leverage to protect this Australian citizen's fate. Patrick Chen and Rosie Greninger reporting from Sydney, Australia for TaiwanPlus.
A huge storm has killed at least 3 people in the U.S. state of California and left more than 600,000 people without power. The weather system, known as an atmospheric river, is packing hurricane-force winds and is triggering mudslides and flooding. Evacuation orders have been issued in some areas, with around half a year's worth of rain expected to fall in just 24 hours. Forecasters say the life-threatening floods could continue into Tuesday. Thanks for joining us today on What's Up Taiwan. I'm Eric Gao, and I'll see you later on TaiwanPlus News.